Hey, this is Jeff Cottrell with the Rock and Roll Sideshow, and I have a co-host with me today, Leo Harper. He's a big Metallica fan, and that's what we're going to talk about today is Metallica. Hey, Leo, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm pretty good. You want to tell people a little bit about your maybe musical background or uh, where you're from, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I'm originally from California. I grew up way up in Northern California, up in the sticks. Grew up with a really musical family. My dad played the drums, and he was a big rock and roll fan. Actually moved in with a guy who was a DJ for a while when I was a kid, and he was big. I remember just being a kid and him having all these great, rock albums that like Back in Black kind of stuff. And yeah, ever since then, just had a penchant for hard and heavy music. Grew up, took after my dad, played the drums, played in a bunch of bands. Actually, played in the Navy for a little while, and still playing in bands now. So that's pretty much my musical journey.
Cool. Yeah, the DJ thing, it must have been, well, especially at that time, must have been cool because you had access to a lot of new music and stuff.
Yeah, well, it was cool because this is obviously decades before the internet. So and I don't know, you remember the '80s, the way these stereo systems were. His DJ equipment literally took up an entire closet in our
Yeah.
house, and he had these, like, to me as a kid, these speakers looked like they were like 6 feet tall, and he would just put this like Lizzie Borden kind of stuff on there and just blast the house. It was great.
That's awesome. Yeah, back then it was like, you could have, I mean, bigger was better. Nowadays everything's smaller. And you could have kind of the same effect, like smaller speakers that sound as good as the bigger ones did.
Yeah, some of the stuff I think.
They still don't look as cool, though, you know?
Right, yeah, definitely. There's still nothing like vinyl. I have a pretty big vinyl collection, and I'll still go down in the basement, and I got a big set of like clip speakers still, and I'll just go down and crank the vinyl because to me that is the essence of rock and roll.
Oh, yeah. I used to have a bunch of vinyl, and along the years I either lost it or sold it or whatever, and now I like see everyone's starting to push vinyl again, but it's like $30 or $40 for a record. So I'm like, I don't know if I'd like to add some, get a collection of like stuff from the past that I loved that I know I would listen to and stuff, but it's like that would be the third or fourth time I'm buying it.
Yeah, I've sold a lot that a lot of stuff I regret. I had a original Guns N' Roses vinyl, Appetite for Destruction, with that original cover of the monster coming over the fence.
Uh-huh.
I actually own that, and right before I joined the Navy, I got rid of a bunch of stuff, and that was one of them. And now on eBay, that's it's $100 record.
Man, I before I was even old enough to buy my own records, I remember I was in like middle school, and this kid I knew, I was, big Kiss fan, I still am, but his dad was a Kiss fan, and he would sell me his dad's vinyl for like $1 a record or $2 a record, and they weren't like mint condition, but they were in really good condition. So these were original records that came out when they came out.
Right.
And I had all of them, and then I don't know, something happened where I was moving, and I sold them for real cheap, and I was like, God, that was terrible.
So did this guy's dad know you was selling his records, or was he just stealing them and selling them to you?
I think he told me his dad knew it, but I don't know. He could have been lying. Who knows? You're in middle school. Who
Right.
knows?
Yeah, it's not like you care.
Yeah, his dad probably put him away somewhere and forgot about him.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I just pulled up the Wikipedia Metallica page just because sometimes you get information that you forgot about on there.
Oh yeah, it's a good idea.
But Metallica was formed in '81 in Los Angeles, and yeah, Leo here is from California. I'm originally from California, Orange County, but it's been years since I've been out there. But yeah, I didn't actually hear of Metallica until Master of Puppets came out.
Yeah, that's exactly when I first heard of him too.
I mean, I know that Kill 'Em All was the first record, and no, you could tell by listening to it, it must have been like the first one because of the production and stuff. But it was still had great songs on it. But yeah, Master of Puppets. I didn't even know about thrash. I didn't hear that music before until uh, Ozzy was coming to town for his Ultimate Sin tour, and I was like, what the hell? It's my birthday. I'm gonna see if my dad will, they'll let me go to the. So, we went to that. My friend came with me, and this was my second very big concert. My second like arena show. So my dad's there, and he's into country music, so he wasn't having a good time.
Yep.
and the first time I went to an arena show, my dad brought me, and it was Kiss and Queensryche. And I just sat there in the back with them, and we watched it. And then this was my second show, and my friend was with me. So I was like, hey, we want to go stand down in front of the stage. So we get down there, and had no idea what was going to happen. And then Metallica comes out, and it was just like kicked us in the face, and it was like, what the hell? It was just brutal. I mean, never heard that kind of music before.
So I'm jealous. I was in my 30s, I think, before I finally got to see Metallica.
Oh, really?
So yeah, and they were. People still ask me. My favorite band is 1983 to 1988, 89 Metallica.
Yeah.
There's a definite time frame, but yeah, up where I lived, we had to drive 2 hours either down to Sacramento or up to Portland to get to any major shows, and that just wasn't happening.
So when was the first time you seen him?
I didn't see him till the what was it, the tour for. I'm trying to think of they put out the reissue of Garage Days, and they went on tour. I don't know what year that would have been, probably around 2000, I think.
Oh.
And that was probably I finally lived in a place where they had a big enough arena that Metallica was actually coming to town.
So that was after Jason left. Then it must have been.
No, actually he was still there. I don't think he left until.
Oh.
I think it would have been right around that time period. But no, he was still with the band.
Oh. Yeah, I only seen Metallica once, and that was the Master of Puppets tour, and I'm just glad I was able to see that because it was actually a month before Cliff Burton died.
Oh wow, yeah, you can see him with Cliff. That's
Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah, that was pretty cool because I mean we saw him, and then like a month later, one of those rock magazines came out, and it said Cliff Burton died. I was like, man, that's terrible.
So it's actually funny. One of the things you mentioned earlier was production, and so I don't know that Metallica was the first thrash band I heard. I think I had heard of like Megadeth and Exodus and Testament, some of the actual smaller Bay Area bands, because they would come through town
Oh.
periodically. But I never cared for it. I would listen to these early thrash records, and the production was just terrible. And finally, Metallica comes out with Master of Puppets, and finally there was a record that was produced like the records you expected to hear.
Well, even
and it just blew my mind.
Ride the Lightning was sounded good too, and that was like the one right before Master of Puppets. But again, never heard of it before never heard of them until Master of Puppets came out, and that was just because I happened to go see Ozzy, and we're at the show. Was pumping their fists in the air. It's all hot and sweaty. There's smoke all over the place, and it was funny because they were playing that song Master of Puppets, which was my first time ever hearing it. And the part where they go, Master, Master. I didn't know what they were saying. I thought they were saying bastard. So
Nice.
I'm standing there going, yelling, bastard, bastard. And the lady standing in front of me turns around. She just looks at me weird. I'm like, what?
I hung around with a little bit older crowd, and that was ultimately how I got introduced to it. And I remember the same thing they have in the song Sanitarium. He says, damn it. And so we would just go crank that song and wait for him to say damn it, and then we just yell in our room. My dad would come in, ask what we were doing, and be like, no, we're singing the song. It's totally cool. None of the stuff up till that I listened to really had cussing in it at all, so we just thought that was the coolest thing.
I mean, that to me is my favorite Metallica album, and probably because of the timing of it and what, all that. But really, the songs on it are just, I mean, not just musically, but lyrically, it's really good.
So I started doing a little, research, I guess. I was looking into this. And, the album comes out in 86. And I was 13 years old, which I think really influential time. But I was really into heavy music already. And a lot of the bands that, were considered heavy at the time, like Motley Crue came out with Theater of Pain. and that was
Yeah,
kind of a light. They weren't Pink. Even bands like the Scorpions had ballads all of a sudden. Cinderella was big, and
yeah,
it just everything became really soft. And I was looking, I think, for that heavy music, and and I think Metallica really kickstarted a lot of. I think a lot of stuff like Skid Row had that heavy. I don't know that they're big if Metallica doesn't change kind of the way music was, at the time. I think everything was just getting so soft and so ballady.
right. Well, I know when they first came out, they were sort of had this. I know like James Hetfield has mentioned a couple times where he's talking about not wanting to come out with the makeup and the hairspray and you know all that, and against doing music videos and all that. They're just trying to do their own thing. And I guess they did until Injustice for All, and they started doing music videos.
Yeah, the lure of the almighty dollar.
Yeah,
But I do think there was a lot of music had become really visual. I mean, we call it hair metal, glam metal. Bands like Poison
right,
had made the whole thing very visual. And then you look at the back of these Metallica albums, and these guys look like they just crawled out of the bar.
right,
And I think to somebody like me who was from a more working class kind of background, I couldn't see myself in a band like Poison, but I could see myself in Metallica.
right,
And I think that was important to a lot of people who really became fans of that style of music.
right. Yeah, I was into the big hair and all that, and I thought it was cool. And then I started getting into the some heavier stuff, and Metallica and Anthrax and whatnot. And, so I knew where they were all coming from. It was all just different sides of the river, I guess.
Right. It was a lot of holdovers from the 70s still. You still had a lot of the 70s glam
Yeah.
had carried over into some of the 80s, hard rock stuff. And I still, Motley Crue's first two albums, I think, are amazing.
Oh yeah.
Actually, and Girls, Girls, Girls. I'm just not a big fan of that Theater of Pain album. I think they went a little on the light side with that one. But
Well,
I
it's
do,
kind of
I do like a lot of that stuff.
it's funny though, as far as like the glam stuff. It's like if you look at it, I remember each year it was like I'd be like, okay, what's everyone going to do this year? Because everyone had the same uh, kind of look. Like I know it was like Shout at the Devil came out, and everyone was doing like a leather and studs kind of look. Kiss was doing Lick It Up, uh, all this stuff. And then the next year it was like, oh, Rat and all them. But then the next year it was Theater of Pain. Uh, and then everyone was doing the bright colors. Then the next year everyone was doing like animal skin prints.
Yeah,
You know,
you get bands like Man of War.
yeah. So every year it changed, but a lot of those bands were like kind of on the same. This year we're doing this, so everyone does it.
Right, they probably all had the same publicists
Yeah,
and everything else.
because I liked Megadeth a lot too, because they were maybe more. I don't know. They were kind of the same, but then different. Maybe a little less. I wouldn't really call Metallica commercial until after Master of Puppets. I mean, back then you wouldn't call them a commercial.
Right, right, not at
But
all.
but nowadays you can hear them on the radio. you know.
Yeah, they're all of a sudden they're classic rock.
Yeah. But like Megadeth, Peace Cells, and So Far So Good So What. That was just some cool stuff too.
And I don't think a lot of that happens without Master of Puppets. I think that's maybe what gets lost is how influential that was. There
Right.
was all of a sudden there was a run on thrash bands in the kind of mid to late '90s, and every label had their big thrash band, and
Right.
I think it's all because of that album. I think if Metallica doesn't make an album that crossed so many boundaries and had so many people that wanted to listen to it. It's possible thrash doesn't ever become what it was. You may just have the big four, and
Right.
that's it. And then you may not have all the other great bands that came from that.
It was like I said, Ride the Lightning was had good sound to it. It had some good songs. It was heavy, and but it didn't do it until Metallica or Master of Puppets came out, and then that was the one because if Master of Puppets never happened, then they would have went from Ride the Lightning to Injustice for All, and that I don't think that would have, because I think Justice for All was really good, but it wasn't as good as Master of Puppets.
Right, it's not going to move the needle in the way that
Right.
that Master Puppets did. And I think every generation or so, every genre has their album, and I think as far as thrash goes, you could almost say Master of Puppets is the thrash version of what Nevermind did for grunge.
Right.
I think every genre has that album, and I don't know if Metallica got lucky, but I think they were at the right place, the right time, with the right songs.
Yeah,
And
I don't know who produced that, but I think a lot of it has to do with the producer too. Because I know some bands that I think are awesome, but they never really reached the mark until they got a certain producer, and then all of a sudden it was like the floodgates opened up.
right, so the guy who produced it, I know his name is Fleming Rasmussen just because I've read the liner notes on these. Growing up, I knew him verbatim.
Uh-huh.
But they actually went to Sweden, to I think Sweden or Denmark, wherever it is Lars is from, is where they actually produced
Yeah,
these.
Denmark.
And I think he was the guy who figured out how to get that fast guitar attack down onto, at that time it was tape. Everything was still tape, and nobody else could do that. You listen to especially like Megadeth, as fast as they are, it gets really muddy
Yeah.
at times in those early ones, and he was the first guy to figure out how to get that real fast, real percussive attack sound out of a guitar onto tape, and and then from there, I think recording took leaps and bounds. I think during this time period, there's a lot of new techniques came out, and then it gets to the point now where everybody can do it. But I'm not sure if they make that record anywhere else that it sounds as good. Obviously, even the first couple Anthrax albums aren't. They don't have that level of
Right.
production.
Like my favorite Anthrax album is Among the Living, but it has an amateurish sound to it. I don't know if
Right.
it's the vocals or what. I don't know, but it just didn't sound like professional like Master of Puppets did. But it was still awesome because they had like really good songs on it.
Yeah, I think that was my first concert. I saw Anthrax, Exodus, and Halloween
Oh,
in,
cool.
in Oakland. Was my first real concert, and that was the same thing was on that Among the Living tour. But yeah, but you're right. There is it sounds like it could have been made in somebody's garage.
It's kind of like they're a thrash garage band punk kind of thing.
Well, I think they were really into punk, and there's a part of that. And honestly, I think you talk about any popular band, you have to have somebody with a vision.
Right.
And ultimately, Lars, I think, is the guy with the vision in Metallica, and I think his vision was to be the biggest band in the world, to be exactly what they are, and I think he was willing to do whatever it took to do that. And they had aspirations, I think, beyond what most bands did. They were willing to spend the money and the time. I don't, as a drummer, Lars has always been one of my influences. I don't think he's a great drummer, but you give the guy a studio, an unlimited budget, and enough time, and he will come up with some amazing shit. He can't replicate it live, which is kind of unfortunate, but he had a vision, and I think he drove that album to be what it is, despite the other, maybe even in spite of the other three guys. He definitely, I think, has made Metallica what they are.
Right. Well, I mean, even at that time, I just, like Master of Puppets, the song's like 8 minutes long. It has all these changes in it and whatnot. And, recording it and writing the song, they stopped and then put a piece in here and then added to it or whatever. But, back then, it was like, it was just, I mean, there might have been other bands doing it, but it was just so new and fresh then. And
Yeah, it's almost progressive, in the way that, especially that particular song. It's almost like prog metal at times. The way they almost orchestrate the song. It's not written. It's composed.
right,
And and actually, I thought for a long time, a couple of years, that was, that's the music I'm going to listen to. I got into like Yes and some other kind of weird, kind of proggy stuff, kind of looking for that, and none of that had it. And I really thought that's the music I want. And then Guns N' Roses came out, and I went back to 4-minute radio songs, and that was, that kind of changed it all back again the other way.
And I remember in the '90s, Dream Theater, and one of their albums I like a lot, Images and Words, but and that was just really progressive. I was like, how in the hell are they recording, this 10, 15-minute song, and the drums are just, it's like the drummer wrote the songs. He's like, you just follow my drums, and it's like chops and stops and everything, left and right. It's like, I don't know, you have to have a really good memory to, be in that band, because it was like Master of Puppets 10 times over with all these stops and breaks in it.
What's amazing is they pull it off live, and I'm sure they're not standing there reading music. So it is. You do have to have a hell of a memory to keep that up. Actually, the only time so I saw Dream Theater, way off topic, but they did Pink Floyd's The Wall in oh no, I'm sorry, they did Dark Side of the Moon in from cover to cover. It was actually one of the coolest shows I've ever been to.
Oh, really? I never seen that. They probably got it on YouTube somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure. I think everything's on YouTube now.
What did you think of Injustice for All?
So I think obviously everybody hates the bass, or the lack of a bass sound in it.
Well, they recorded that themselves. I think they said on like a 8 or 12 track recorder or something, or the drums. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, the way I understand it, I've read as much about this band as you can. The way I understand it, they actually went back out to record where they recorded Master, and they just didn't like the way the songs were sounding. So they actually, I think, they came back and did it back here in America in a new place with some new producers, and it sounds like, if you kind of listen to them, that they recorded a lot of things in a lot of places. They were in the middle of a tour, and they would just fly into a local studio and put some guitar tracks down and then fly back out, and they were just pieced together. And I think some of the songs reflect that they're not as not as fluid as some of their older stuff. But I think they went down a path. I think part of what makes Master Puppets so good is Cliff's bass tone, but it's a lot more subdued than on the first two albums. I mean, listen to Ride the Lightning, and his bass tone is up there with the rhythm guitar. Think of a song like For Whom the Bell Tolls. That distorted bass sound is almost the basis of the song.
Yeah.
And Master Puppets, they subdued it a little bit, and Justice for All, they went even further away from that. It took all the bass sound out of it. But that is as progressive a metal album as you're going to find. I mean, that is, I think all those songs are all long songs with, multiple changes, starts and stops. I think Blackened, the first song, is probably the only one that's a kind of traditional metal song.
Right.
And then they all follow a pattern. The first song, I don't know if Blackened does or not. I think it does. I think on Ride the Lightning, Master Puppets, and Justice for All, they all start with an acoustic. They have a hard blazing song, and then they come into the title track. They have an instrumental towards the end, and then they end with another fast track. It was kind of their last album that had that formula that Metallica really seemed to use.
Were you disappointed with the Black Album?
Yeah, I say that. Everybody always thinks I'm crazy. To me, that wasn't Metallica anymore. It was almost as if a different band, different four guys had come in and started playing. I just didn't. I'd gotten into some different stuff by then, and that wasn't my band anymore. That wasn't my Metallica, and I really haven't cared for a whole lot that they've done since.
Yeah, I am the same way. I mean, I was happy to hear them on the radio, and I thought, it was nice to hear them maybe, I don't know what you call it, maybe grow musically and go in some other directions, but I was just like, but this is not Metallica. This is not Battery. It's like, what happened?
Right, that's exactly right. Yeah, I just don't, and I was coming out of high school, and obviously the grunge, I think, had exploded by this point. But I'd really started listening to some kind of more experimental type of stuff, and I'd hoped Metallica would keep going in that direction. Continue what I think the next logical album after Injustice for All might have even been more progressive, but instead they went the exact opposite way and just made an album full of radio songs.
Right. And then when Load and Reload came out, that's when I just dropped off the map. I was like, I think I'm done listening.
Yeah, I've never owned either of those. I mean, there's some good songs on there. If they weren't Metallica, I think if there were, obviously those two records, I think there's one good album within those two records.
Right.
But I think if any other band had made those, I would probably love them. But the fact that it's Metallica, it kills it for me.
Saint Anger and Death Magnetic, which I can't talk about because I never really listened to them.
Yeah, so actually, Death Magnetic, they tried to go back to their roots. That is an attempt at a thrash album, but I think that suffers from I don't know exactly when that came out, but I'm going to say, I don't know, probably 2010 or so. Hold on. I liked your idea of pulling up the Wikipedia page. So, okay, yeah, so that came out in 2008, and that was right in the height of the iPod, and everybody had gotten into digital music, and that album, I think, was recorded and produced and mixed for an iPod, and I think it sounds like it. There's no dynamics at all. It's just...
I've heard people complain about the drum sound.
Well, yeah, that's a lot of it. It doesn't sound real. Well, especially Saint Anger. Saint Anger, they tried... So if you listen to, like, as a drummer, I'm going to get a little drum nerdy on you, but you listen to a band like Lamb of God, who was, a big band at the time they made Saint Anger, there's not a lot of snare in his snare sound. Everything he does, he's one of my favorite drummers, it's really quick, really accurate. There's not a lot of ring. Lars tried to copy that sound, and they just, either he doesn't have the knowledge or whoever they had produce it doesn't have the knowledge, and it just didn't work at all. And I can't listen to Saint Anger because of the snare.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's hitting a tin can with a baseball bat. It's almost not a drum sound. It's just some kind of weird, like, percussion noise. No, I was just going to say, I think Megadeth makes albums, and what they try to do is make modern takes on old music, and I haven't really cared for much they've done either. I think the new Anthrax album, actually, I think it came out yesterday. I just listened to that. To me, it sounds like a power metal album, not a thrash album. And I just think thrash may be a genre whose time has passed. Maybe it's time for these guys to move into the next phase, where now you've got bands taking that and taking it to even more aggressive, areas. And I don't know that these guys are interested in keeping up, or if they're even if they can keep up.
Well, I don't know how much more aggressive you can get until you can't understand what's going on.
Well, yeah, that's what a lot of it's become. It's just now everything's very percussive. Even the guitar, you don't get chords anymore. It's just one note. Guys just chugging that E string,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what metal's become. And I think it all starts back from Metallica. They're the first ones to show you that you could do that. You could go out and just hammer it and just full throttle all the way down and go as fast as you can go, and still have it be melodic and still have it be musical.
Right.
And I'm not sure that there's many other bands that have been able to do that.
Just don't yell into the mic and growl where I can't understand what the hell you're saying. It's not like James Hetfield has a great singing voice, or Dave Mustaine has, what I'm saying, but at least you can understand what they're saying for the most part.
Yeah, so some of it gets bad. You get the Cookie Monster
Yeah.
vocals on a lot of this stuff now. I mean, I don't want to sound like an old man. There is a lot of kind of metalcore or post-hardcore music that I can appreciate, but some of it is really dense. There's just no melody anymore, right. And it really just becomes a guy yelling over as many notes as they can cram into a measure, and you really lose that sense of melody that
You
that's
need
these great early bands had.
yeah, it's like it doesn't matter how great the music, or you could have a two chord song, just have a decent melody. You got to have a melody.
Yeah, I think punk rock proved that.
Yeah,
Two
yeah,
chords and a chorus, and you can make a great
yeah.
song.
So you said that Master of Puppets is probably your favorite Metallica album, right?
That might be my favorite album. Period. Like I told you, I think that's one of my desert island albums. If I'm trapped on a desert island and I only have so many albums I can ever take with me, I think Master of Puppets is probably one of them.
What would you say your two favorite songs off that album are?
Well, I I've always liked Leper Messiah.
Right, that's
I
awesome.
think it's actually the first two on the second side, so Leper Messiah and Disposable Heroes. I
Okay.
think are my two favorite songs. Just I think because they're so aggressive and they're not. Again, to go back to where music was in 1986, they're not songs about love or drugs or picking up chicks. Disposable Heroes is about the hell of warfare, and Leper Messiah, just people being sheep and kind of Reverend Jim Jones kind of things. And
Yeah.
I've always thought that's what made it so cool was the lyrical content definitely helps.
Yeah, I'd have to say Leper Messiah and either Master of Puppets or uh, I don't know. Battery's awesome too, but but maybe Welcome Home Sanitarium. I like that one a lot.
Well, that was the first. So that was the song that I remember. I think I played it for my mom or my grandma, somebody like that. I'm 13, 14 years old. I want people to accept what I'm listening to. So I played that song, and I remember thinking, this is the one that they'll understand because it's slow. And then I realized as I get older, no, it's not slow at all. It's just slower than the breakneck speed of everything else.
Right.
But at the time, I'm like, no, this is a ballad. No, not so much.
Like you were talking about, they were able to get that sound and make it really sharp. It wasn't all muddy sounding or anything, so they made it work.
Yeah, it's still. I think that is probably a testament to James as a guitarist. I mean, I think he didn't even want to be a guitarist. He just wanted to sing. And originally they were looking for another guitarist, and now he turns out to be, I think, one of the best rhythm guitarists in the history of rock music.
It's not like it's they just play 3 minute songs with four or five chords. He's got some studying to do.
Yeah, and it's just the way he played, just down picks, he attacks everything. To me, he's fun to watch play, just to watch his hands, because he's just working the guitar. He's not a finesse guy. He's not like Steve Vai. He's like a lumberjack, and just down picking the shit out of it. And to me that's fun to watch. You know, I
Eh,
can I can sit and watch Joe Satriani play, but I'm like, man, I can't do that.
yeah,
I'll never be able to do that. But I can
it's
watch
something
James
I can
Hetfield.
relate to.
Right, I can watch James Hetfield just make sawwood out of his guitar, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do.
And then he comes out and goes, "Yeah."
Yeah. So there's a website, and all it has is all of his different versions of "Yeah," and you can
Right.
make a whole Metallica song out of just "Yeah."
Yeah, I saw that. That's pretty funny. But yes, this is just one of his trademarks.
So and actually, again, something I read, I don't know, I just read a lot of random stuff. He didn't actually introduce the "Yeah" until the Black Album, and I started listening to some of the older stuff. It's not really, he doesn't really do a lot of it. He'll carry some notes out, but it's that "Yeah" doesn't exist until the Black Album, and then it became a staple of everything else they did. It's like he ran out of words.
Yeah, I didn't really pick up on that. I just know that every time I see live footage, it's like, yeah, this and yeah, that. And it's funny because Gene Simmons from Kiss does that a lot. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
so it's always like, yeah.
they just don't know what else to say. They got to throw something in there.
Right. What would you say your second favorite Metallica album is?
Probably Ride the Lightning. I think these two albums they're so interconnected. I think if you even look on the Wikipedia page, there's not even a separate place for Ride the Lightning. It just exists as almost a footnote to Master of Puppets.
Yeah.
I think those two albums are so similar. In the format and the way the songs are written. Like I said, I think the biggest difference is I think Master of Puppets is when they went to the Mesa They started getting the Mesa Boogie amps. I think before that they were using the old Marshalls, which just are a little, they have a little bigger sound, but they're not as accurate. So I think there's still some room. Ride the Lightning could have been a better album, could have been better produced. I think some of the songs, it almost sounds like they had good ideas and they just never finished them. It's an album full of 4 and 5 minute songs.
Yeah.
They don't have any of their 8 minute epics. I think the Call of Cthulhu is, but that, being an instrumental. But yeah, I think that's probably my second favorite. And just because I think that's the second album I heard. I heard Master of Puppets and it blew my mind. So then I went out and bought Ride the Lightning. And
Yeah, that's what I did. And then I think my third favorite is the first one, and that's the order I bought them. And it's obviously, you know, sounds not as good. The songs aren't long. I mean, it's long, and they were just sort of starting, but they had a lot of good songs on there. I thought,
yeah,
like Four
and again,
Horsemen and No Remorse, and good stuff.
yeah, Phantom Lord has always been
Yeah.
one of my favorites. I like and again, you speak to how good of musicians these guys are. They took what was Dave Mustaine's song, the Mechanics song, and they turned it into the Four Horsemen, which is an infinitely better song. And I probably pissed some people off who are diehard Megadeth fans, but Four Horsemen is a way better song than Mechanics was. So it's funny that they kicked him out, and then they took his song and just made it better. And I think in the end, it's probably a good thing Mustaine left. Otherwise, I think you might have 4 or 5 versions of Kill 'Em All. Maybe they never progressed beyond that.
Yeah, well, what I heard is that they were having a feud because Dave wanted to sing. He wanted to be the singer, and James wanted to sing. So, and now when I read stuff, it's like he's putting down Kirk Hammett for the leads, or taking his leads that he wrote, and all this, and so I don't know. But hey, Dave's singing and playing guitar in Megadeth, so I guess he wanted to sing.
Yeah, well, I think he's definitely done all right for himself.
Yeah, that little.
Yeah, if you watch the early videos, Dave did all the talking on stage. In between songs and all that kind of stuff. He was the front man. James was just the singer.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
So yeah, it's kind of strange.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think it all worked out for the best. I've always wondered. Again, a little kind of off topic is. So they wake Dave up one morning, give him a bus ticket, and throw him on a bus. My question is, what the hell? The guy had a half stack, or maybe a full stack, some guitars, some effects. I mean, what do you do with? Did they throw that on the bus? What do you do with all this guy's shit when you kick him out of the band across the country?
I don't know.
That's always been my question. I would love, if I ever had Dave a chance to ask him, I'd be like, what? Did they just cram your gear in the bottom of the bus and send you back to California?
I don't know. They probably, well, good luck to you.
Yeah. We'll ship.
Sympathies.
Good luck. Yeah. You have a whole Marshall stack here. We're just going to hang on to this for you.
So they must have had the same connections, or whatever, because it was like they were out, even though he got kicked out, they were still coming out with albums at the same time.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, it's having never really been inside of the music business. I don't know, but I think there's a lot of nepotism. There's a lot of cronyism. People just hiring people they know and trust. So, there's some guys out there who are like, oh, we know this Dave guy. We know, what he can do, and we'll give him a record deal and, let him make records. Yeah, they made their first album, Megadeth, on $8,000. And Dave makes it sound like that is, a minuscule amount of money. And, I've been in bands where we've made records for $800 that sound better than Killing Is My Business does. So it always makes me laugh to think they could only make a record on $8,000, and this was in, 1983, 1984. That's a lot of money.
I don't know. To me, I guess if you could do a whole album at $8,000, and I mean something that's going to be put out by, all over the country or the world, even 8,000 sounds like it's kind of cheap. I mean, if that includes the producer and everything.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't know all the details, but that's just always his story. His story is how they only got $8,000 from this label, Combat Records. They only got $8,000. I'm like, well, you probably could have made a pretty good record. But instead I think they spent it all on drugs and alcohol, and
Right.
ended up making the record for as cheap as they could.
But nowadays, hell, you could do a whole album for, I don't know. You got all the equipment at your house.
Yeah, it's common now. I mean, all you need anymore is a laptop and some type of Pro Tools, or a digital audio workstation, and you can make a record. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not. It seems like it opens a lot of doors. Maybe if Metallica comes around today, um, they would just make their own records and have a much different path than they ended up having. You don't need major labels anymore. But then again, maybe Metallica comes around today and nobody ever gets a chance to hear them because there are no major record labels. So it's
Yeah,
kind of a double-edged sword.
yeah, I don't know. It'd be like, I think it'd just be like music wouldn't be as big a deal as it was. Because I don't think it's as big a deal as it used to be. I mean, there's so much other stuff that people are, with the internet and smartphones and all this. It's like there's all this other stuff to distract you. Back then, it was like, you had what, MTV and some music magazines, and then whatever the radio station was playing.
Yeah, you really were at the mercy of what people within the industry wanted you to hear. But like I said, I would lay and read liner notes of records, and I would sit and stare at the artwork, and to me that was part of it. And all that's gone now. I think music's just become background noise in a lot of ways. So we have a big casino out here, Mohegan Sun. They have a lot of shows. I took my kid to a concert by I think Avicii is how you pronounce it. Basically, he's a DJ. We paid like $75 for tickets. I took my kid, and it was a guy standing there playing music on his laptop, and I was blown away. There was 50,000 people in this place screaming to a guy, standing up there basically playing a laptop.
Oh yeah, that's just ridiculous. I saw some movie that's on Netflix now. I didn't watch it because it's stupid, but I didn't even see it. But it's about DJs, and they're standing up there on the stage doing their thing, and people are all into it. And it's like, you press that button.
Yeah.
What the hell? Next, we
Yep.
have people up there playing Guitar Hero and with a big crowd.
Oh man, we had
It's like,
that. You know what? That you're right. That is the next. That's coming.
I think what it is too is well, of course, as the years go on, there's more people on the planet, uh, and everyone wants to be a star. Now you don't have to have any skills to be a star. Just press that button, and if you know the right people, you can press that button and have a fan base, and it's like what happened to the people that spent the time, that has the talent, that learned the stuff, that are creative, and artists that come out now, like female musicians or singers that all look hot. It's like, I'm sure there's some really talented women out there that don't look like they just came out of a fashion magazine.
Yeah, I think music and the music and the look have become kind of synonymous. I mean, although you can look at somebody like Adele, she definitely doesn't look like she came out of a fashion magazine. But I think part of it is the path to fame now has become stand in line at a TV show and have somebody tell you if you're good or not.
Yeah.
And none of the guys that we grew up listening to, there's no way Paul Stanley is ever going to win American Idol.
Right.
But he's one of the best rock singers ever. It's amazing. These guys, people will stand there and let somebody tell them they're not any good, and then
Yeah.
and they think they're not any good.
They're going to tell you who to like.
Yeah, and just go out there and do it. You never know what people like.
Back in the day, you had talent scouts go out to check bands. Now it's like, now the media is going to tell you who you should like and who you shouldn't like.
That's right. And you're not cool if you don't like the right people. Yeah, I think hard work it was a big part of being, in a band back when I was first in bands, when I was 15. It was all about hard work and playing shows, and now it's about making a YouTube video and hoping somebody on a TV show sees you. I don't know. I don't want to sound like an old fuddy-duddy, but and things weren't always better. I think there's definitely some positives to being able to distribute your own music and get it out there to the world. Things like SoundCloud, I think, are a good thing. But there's just so much noise. There's so much information out there that everything just gets kind of lost. So you wonder if,
Yeah, it's
you
hard
know,
to sort through all of it. So
will there ever be rock stars again? Is there any way to get in front of millions of people anymore when everybody's just putting their stuff out there?
it's not just like black and white, you know. Like back then, there was good parts to it and bad parts, and now there's good parts and bad parts to it. So it's like, you know, I mean, it's cool that people can have more freedom and not have to be loaded with money to be able to record music or have the record companies tell you what you can and can't do. But now you got to weed through more stuff because everyone's out there putting stuff out.
Right. That's exactly right. I mean, again, I'm in a band. I can tell you, there's a million other people out there doing exactly what you're trying to do, and they're all using the same mechanisms to try and do it, and it really saturates the market.
Right. And it's like even in the 70s and 80s, it's like you're not, it's not like most of these bands weren't like geniuses and musical whatever that's how they made it. It just happened to be they were in the right place at the right time, knew the right people. Because I've seen a lot of bands like in Sunset Strip back in the late 80s that were great, but they didn't make it. Or maybe they did one record and then you never heard of them again. And then you got bands that you're like, how did they get a record deal? you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's about who you know, being in the right place at the right time.
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot of instances of bands that weren't the most talented guys, but they were the best band doing what they were doing.
Right.
I have a friend who swears that nobody famous ever played on their own records, and he's got all these crazy conspiracy theories that all these guys in the 70s and 80s, there was a core of musicians who played on all those records, and um, then there might be some truth to that. Probably a lot of songwriters in the background helping bands, craft songs.
Right.
But I think that is why something like Metallica can come through, because it was so different. Those guys didn't have songwriters. No songwriters writing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's why Guns N' Roses came out a year later. I think Appetite came out, could be so big because it was real. It wasn't these crafted songs written by songwriters in the studio for the record company.
Yeah, I remember when I was hanging out in California, there was some people there that I guess knew some of the people that were involved with recording Appetite for Destruction. And they were like, yeah, they were in there for days and hours and just a bunch of noise coming out of the room. And, and it took a lot of work for them to get the songs together and get the sound together because, you got two guitar players that have two different guitar sounds, which usually that was kind of new because usually they try to make this guitar sounds the same on the song. So
Yeah,
you got, different kind of stuff. And then because Appetite for Destruction, when that first came out and everyone's like, oh yeah, Guns N' Roses. And I listened to it. I had to listen to it like 4 times before I liked it. The first couple times I was like, what's going on?
I remember sitting watching the Headbangers Ball with Ricky Rackman, and they played what is it? What was the first hit? I can't think of it right now. Welcome to the Jungle, and just being blown away. I mean, that's like a seminal moment in my musical life was when that came on. And so there's things like that, and I think what it is honesty. I think when a band believes in what they're doing completely, I think a lot of times that's what separates them from a lot of other people that are just playing songs other people are writing for them. I don't think any. I mean, I think Duff is probably a world class bassist, and Slash has turned himself into a very good guitarist. I don't think in 1986 or '87, whenever it was, I don't think they were very good musicians. I think they were just a lot of guys who like to hang out and get drunk and write songs,
Right.
and they ended up just writing this because they only made. I don't really care a lot for Use Your Illusion. Again, I think there's one good album in those two,
Right.
and I think a lot of it they're just not very good. But that album, they just struck lightning in a bottle.
And
Yep.
most of that money came to pay off the debts and stuff it took to get that out.
No, I can't imagine.
All right, well, we're going to wrap this up, and I want to thank Leo for being on here, and hopefully he'll join us for some more discussions, and maybe we'll get some. I mean, I don't think we're going to get a Metallica interview anytime soon, but I figured it'd be cool to talk about him because I know there's a lot of Metallica fans out there.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. That was a good time. Thanks for having me.
Again, I want to thank Leo for joining us today. Anyone out there that's a Metallica fan, let us know what your favorite Metallica album is. I'm guessing most of you would say Master of Puppets or the Black Album. But hey, maybe not. So leave us a thumbs up and leave us a comment. Keep rocking.